Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today I want to talk and taste 5 amazing white wines from regions famous for their red wines. This video was inspired by 2 of my earlier videos where I talked about hidden gems of Bordeaux and Rioja, their white wines. I argued that in these regions, which are deeply associated with top quality red wines, some of the most exciting wines for me are actually the whites. So I made 2 videos, each solely dedicated to one of these regions, only focusing on their white wines. But the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to highlight other red wine regions that also produce exceptional white wines. Wines that, even if they do not spark the same level of excitement as their red counterparts, at the very least deserve to be tasted and explored. After all, currently we are seeing a clear shift in the wine world towards white wines. Since I absolutely love my Rioja Blanco and Bordeaux Blanc, I have also included them in this video. But if you want a deeper dive into them, check out my other 2 original videos. Now, I know this might be a bit of niche topic because in some of these regions I am about to discuss, white wines make up just 10% or less of the total production. But trust me when I say this, these wines are absolutely worth seeking out. So let's finally discuss and taste 5 amazing white wines coming from red wine regions. Toscana no doubt has a reputation for exceptional red wines. Think of Chianti Clasico, think of Brunello di Montalcino, think of Tinanello and Sassicaia. As a winemaking region, it is so diverse, producing everything from fresh, easy-drinking reds to rich, complex wines with exceptional aging potential. Tuscany even offers Bordeaux-style blends that proudly challenge some of Bordeaux's finest wines. But the truth is, Tuscany can offer similar complexity when it comes to white wines. However, they might be a bit harder to find, and not all of them carry the big, recognizable names that resonate widely. Think of Vernaccia San Gimignano and Pomino. But today, I wanted to specifically highlight Vermentino. I think it is such an exciting grape variety, though I was not always this enthusiastic about it. Let me tell you how I came around to it. In fact, it was the very same wine that we're going to taste here today, Grattamacco Vermentino. I opened the bottle right here in Riga, Latvia, poured myself a glass right here in Riga, Latvia, and yet when I smelled and tasted that wine, I felt like I was sipping it somewhere along the Tuscan coast. It had that salinity, that floral lightness and slightly waxy finish. But let's not talk further, let's open the bottle and see if it can take us to Tuscany together. Now, it has been a really long winter here, so take me to Italy. On the nose, it seems much riper than I remember it from my last tasting. Think of all the yellow plums and yellow stone fruits such as apricots and peaches. But it is opening up and it also shows these white florals like orange blossom and cherry blossom. And through all of that fruit, I know some of you will not like it. It feels slightly saline. Let's taste that wine. Now, this is my first wine today. It is early morning, and it has that really typical for Italian white wines, that kind of phenolic grip at the end. Some people might love it. I do. I have grown to enjoy it a lot. Some maybe not necessarily as much, but there's a lot of freshness, and it kind of invites you to just do nothing, you know, just sit by the beach and enjoy the beautiful weather and just vacation. I need vacation. Don't expect Vermentino to be this super aromatic wine. It might be wine that you might need to talk a little bit more and maybe pay attention more if you want to catch its true identity. But I think this actually shows it quite lovely. And the very first nose was really expressive, and now it kind of calmed down a little bit. Beautiful wine. But I mean, like with every Italian wine, I guess it kind of requires you a bit of food, not necessarily anything heavy, but like, you know, some olive or, you know, tiny marinated fishes, or I don't know, like just crisps with some olive oil on it. Rhone Valley has always been associated with premium red wines, both the Northern Rhone and the Southern Rhone. However, very few people know that the famous Chateauneuf-du-Pape, for example, also comes in white version. In the northern part, the famous Hermitage Hill is planted with both white and red grape varieties. In some cases, white Hermitage is even more highly valued than its red sibling, and some wine critics note that white Hermitage wines can age just as long, if not longer, than the reds. So there is definitely an admiration for these great wines. Here, Rosagne and Marsanne are the main players, and occasionally you can find monovarietal wines as well. But Northern Rhone is unique in a way, because here we have two appellations that are exclusively dedicated to the white wine production, Condrieu and Chateau Grillé, both made from Viognier. In Southern Rhone, you can see the shift towards white wines, as appellations that previously did not allow white wine production, such as Gigondas, now do with new regulations introduced in 2022. In both the Northern Rhone and Southern Rhone, whites are often big, rich, and opulent in style, some even oily. But don't expect this from every label. In fact, these characteristics are more common in top appellations and premium-priced wines. That said, more affordable labels can still be fantastic. Don't overlook a simple Côte du Rhône Blanc. These wines are packed with a lot of freshness and liveliness and display ample of fruit. Okay, so let's try Chateauneuf-du-Pape Blanc. This is actually 2018 vintage, so let me calculate. It is 7 years old. And it does show a lot of ripeness. In this wine, the blend is Grenache Blanc, Bourbelin, I love that name, Roussanne, and Claret. And I told you that sometimes these wines can seem oily and waxy, and this is exactly what it feels on the nose. It feels like really that kind of honey wax note, really expressive. But it is also filled with a lot of peaches and apricots and maybe like a hint of mango. And bear in mind, this wine is actually 13.5 alcohol. In the southern part of Rhone, you will rarely find that nowadays, I think. Yes, it is quite complex, semi-aromatic nose, and kind of the dominant role is taken by fruit and then that waxiness. Fruit and waxiness, a bit of smoky element as well. Maybe something from oak, I'm not sure. Let's taste that wine. I just think it is so interesting. We don't expect white Rhone varieties to deliver that really high, mouth-watering acidity, but at the same time, I admire producers for their ability to kind of retain freshness. And here, similarly as with the Grattamacco wine, the Vermentino, it has a bit of that waxiness, that kind of phenolic grip that gives the freshness, that elevates the fruit and kind of creates kind of zestier mouthfeel overall. You feel the depth and you feel the intensity and concentration of the fruit here, and almost kind of power here. But it feels really fresh, elevated, kind of maybe 2 centimeters above the ground walking. It is also opening up quite nicely. Now it is mostly kind of waxy, really ripe stone fruit that dominates the nose. Wow, there's just that zestiness and maybe slight orange or lemon peel that adds zestiness to the finish. Great wine. So in this specific case, I chose wine from my own collection, my own fridge, but believe me, there are amazing wines that you can choose from Southern Rhone and amazing, great examples, definitely that offer more value also in the Northern Rhone. So it is just about the exploring. When we talk about Rioja Reds these days, we see a certain shift back to blends rather than monovarietal Tempranillo wines. And I am really excited about this because it celebrates the diversity of grape varieties that Rioja traditionally offered. Though not as pronounced, a similar trend can be observed with Rioja whites. Of course, Viura remains the dominant grape, and many winemakers make white wines from it, and the best examples retain freshness and zest beautifully. But there are also wines made from other grape varieties such as Tempranillo Blanco, Malvasia de Rioja, and Garnacha Blanca. Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc are also permitted in Rioja, though I can't say I have been overly excited about these grapes in this region. That being said, I absolutely love Remeyuri Blanco, which is a blend of all white grape varieties allowed in Rioja. I think it is stunning, fresh and zesty, and offers good cellaring potential. My most recent discovery has been Maturana Blanca, an old, low-yielding grape variety with an amazing texture. And this is actually the wine I would have presented to you today because it was both really affordable and offered great depth. But unfortunately, the one producer that I know who makes it has not responded to my emails. And since I could not get my Maturana Blanca, we are tasting today 100% Viura from Cune Monopole. Wow. Really intense nose. And this is something that kind of strikes me with Viura. I don't necessarily think of it as an aromatic grape, but sometimes there are few producers that are able to make really intensely perfumed white wines from it. And it kind of shows these honeyed notes, but also really ripe, juicy yellow plums, yellow cherries, and kind of red apples as well. There's also some of that smokiness in it. Really beautiful wine on the nose. What it is today, I mean, I feel like I have picked all phenolic wines because this one as well. But here maybe the phenolic kind of grip, that waxy texture on the finish might come from quite long lees aging, a little bit of batonnage. But on the nose, it is quite ripe, but at the same time really zesty and lively. And Viuras differ in Rioja. Some of them can have this really high mouth-watering acidity, and this one stands somewhere in between. I think similarly as with Chateauneuf-du-Pape, the freshness and the zest here is given by that grip, that kind of waxy texture on the palate. But on the nose, one thing that I missed to describe, it has that kind of green herbal hint that adds depth to the wine. It is not necessarily anything dried or like spicy, but more like fresh rosemary or lavender, kind of something green, but it adds just extra dimension to the wine. And I think it is really beautiful here. It plays quite nicely. It is still really opulent and fresh and ripe yellow and white fruit that dominates, but to have that kind of nettle hint on the background is really beautiful. And I love how it kind of has a bit rounded edges on the palate as well. Like it almost gives you this freshness and zest, but at the end it just roundens it and makes it a bit spherical on the mouthfeel. Great wine. And this one does not cost you a fortune. I think it is like 20 or maximum 30 euros. Bordeaux is synonymous with red wines, and if we set aside the fact that Bordeaux is a beautiful city after which this region is named, it is also associated with the deep red color, Bordeaux. And yet, here I am talking about its truly exciting white wines. Because Bordeaux is such a vast winemaking region, we cannot expect all of its wines to be of exceptional quality. In fact, I would go as far as to say that majority of Bordeaux Blanc might not be particularly exciting. But when these wines are great, they are exceptional. One of the greatest challenges, however, is finding these great ones. Two appellations, Graves and the more recent, smaller Pessac Léognan, are known for producing some of the highest quality white wines in Bordeaux. But if a winemaker is outside of these appellations and wants to make a dry white wine, they will likely have to label it under the broader Bordeaux or Bordeaux Superiore AOC. So when it comes to Bordeaux Blanc, especially when searching for value, I'm afraid there is nothing much to say, just that to finding the true gems takes some digging. The two dominant grape varieties are Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon, and you can find both monovarietal wines and blends. Styles also vary significantly. While many of the top wines are aged in oak and on lees, more and more producers are now prioritizing freshness and reducing the oak influence. These wines can be fresh and crunchy, as well as textured, waxy, and smoky, so knowing a producer's house style is very important. Some of the best examples are actually rarer and more expensive than their red siblings. Think of Haut-Brion Blanc. Okay, this wine was actually bought at the property when I was visiting them, and they are not widely known for the dry white wines. They're actually much better known for their sweet wines, for their Barsac. And by the way, while I don't forget, if you can't keep up with all the names written down here in the video, I do list all the wines that I taste in the description below, so check there. I wonder if this wine is heavily dominated by Sauvignon Blanc. It is just so distinct here on the nose. It has that kind of smokiness, slight cat pee, or on the gooseberry bush. You rarely find that nowadays. But it also has that kind of fresh nettle and kind of really just freshly cut grass, while still retaining, I don't know, like gooseberry elements, blackcurrant leaf. Now, this is one wine in the list that has really high mouth-watering acidity. And it is just kind of bursting with freshness, with liveliness, with energy here. And even though I feel that kind of freshly cut grass element, that kind of nettle hint on the palate as well, it has no phenolic kind of texture here. It is all freshness and liveliness and really zesty type of crunchy type of fruit. It almost feels like I have bitten in really fresh lime. I guess sweet wine producers have to know how to retain their acidity for balance, and this is what shines here. I think this wine offers a lot of brightness on the nose and on the palate, and I definitely love to enjoy it right now. But because of that really high acidity, I see no reason why this wine couldn't be cellared for 5 more years, for sure. I mean, it is just so... It is bursting with liveliness right now on the palate. And while I talk with you, I still feel my bite in that lime with all those juices just bursting and that really bright acidity. Some of you might say that Douro Valley is not necessarily the loudest name when it comes to dry red wines, but by now I believe it has established itself as a serious red wine region, right alongside its famous port wines, of course. And while we constantly hear that Douro's red wines offer great value, we don't hear nearly as much praise for its white wines. You might have noticed by now that today I am highlighting more indigenous grape varieties. And when it comes to indigenous grape diversity, very few countries can compete with Portugal. I would think Greece or Italy, maybe. There are grape varieties that most wine lovers may have never even heard of, simply because they have always been part of a blend. Think of Donzelinho Branco, Gouveio, Rabigato, and Viosinho. How often do we see these names on the labels? But the truth is, these grapes hold real charm. They are heat and drought resistant, can be seductively perfumed, yet still vibrant and fresh. And when you travel to the Douro, under that intense summer heat, all you want in your glass is that pure refreshment. So I see no reason why Douro's white wines shouldn't receive the same recognition as their red wines. All right, our last wine comes actually from one of the coolest estates probably in Douro Valley, which is Niepoort. And it definitely offers great value because this wine should be around 20 euros or even below. And on the nose, you feel all these florals like spring blossom, spring meadow, but it is layered with notes of fresh apple, pear, some peaches as well. Some pine needle maybe, but not in a way of under-ripeness, but more like kind of just adding complexity to the wine on the nose. Let's taste it. Now, this wine comes from really warm climate, but it has only 12.5% of alcohol, and somehow they have managed to have a lot of fruit on the palate. I have noticed that sometimes when you harvest really early, you kind of sacrifice the fruit, but this is not the case here, which I think is magnificent and really masterfully done by this producer. What is that I'm feeling? Kind of sea breeze? No? There's something really fresh. It almost seems like the forest is wakening up after heavy rain, you know? It smells beautiful. And with all that freshness and with that lightness of alcohol, it still managed to kind of have beautiful weight on the mid palate. It is not something that you just sip and forget and kind of get slightly tipsy. It will also do the trick, of course, but it lingers on your palate a bit longer. It stays there. It kind of talks to you and offers all that freshness and that kind of brightness and zestiness of all those fruit without being too heavy or intense. I think this is amazing wine, especially given the price category. So the first wine took us to Italy, Tuscany. So let the last one take us to Douro Valley, which in my opinion is one of the most breathtaking winemaking regions in Europe, if not the whole world. So make sure to watch this video next.